Hello again. All right. So before we had a constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation. I'm going to go pretty quickly through the Articles of Confederation, but I want to kind of touch base on all the things that you need to know about it. Okay. So first off, there were two groups in uh, the founding of the country. There were the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. You've heard a lot about them already through the Federalist Papers. The Federalists wanted a strong central government. Anti-Federalist wanted more power to the states. And if you look at this division, the Anti-Federalists are all the yellow areas, the purple areas are the Federalists, and essentially the Federalists are similar to the Democrats in today, who are closer to metropolitan city areas where there's high population, centered in the Northeast. And if you are like in a rural farm area, you are probably anti-federalist. Okay, and the anti-federalists are the ones who wrote the Articles of Confederation, but they had so many problems. Okay, so what are some of the weaknesses? It was a unicameral Congress, meaning it was a one house Congress, and to pass a law, you needed 9 out of 13 states to pass a law. Okay, it's hard to get 9 out of 13 people to agree on anything, even a flavor of ice cream. Like, if I were to ask you guys what's your favorite flavor, I doubt I could get 9 out of 13 of you to agree. To have an amendment, that means to change it. An amendment would be to change it, you needed unanimous. That's even harder. That's almost impossible. Unanimous votes are so rare in any case. Representatives were frequently absent. There was really no pay, and so people just did their job first, and the job of the country came second. And also, they had to travel, and there was no capital city. They just like sometimes it's Philadelphia, sometimes it was Boston, sometimes it was Annapolis, sometimes it was down in Savannah, Charleston. They moved around a lot, so there was no one place that people would go, and often people wouldn't show up. You could not have federal tax. There were no federal taxes. There were state taxes. States were allowed to tax, but the federal government was not allowed to tax. Therefore, they had no money to pay for anything, roads, armies, and stuff like that. And they were also not allowed to raise an army. Each state had their own army. Um, and there was no executive or judicial branch. There was no president and there was no Supreme Court, which made it pretty weak. State constitutions were very strong. They were very much like our constitution now. They were under the form of republicanism. Okay, a republic is where you have representative governments. That is what we have as a government now. People often call the United States a democracy, but that's really not what it is. It is a republic. Most had strong governors with veto power, okay, much like we have today with a president, and also our governor has veto power. They had bicameral legislatures. That means they had two houses, like a Senate and a House of Representatives, like an upper and a lower house. Property was required for voting. Um, some had universal white male suffrage, meaning all white men could vote. Suffrage means the right to vote. This is a vocab word that if you don't already know, you should learn. I'll let you know that a lot of people, include myself included, when I first heard that word, I thought it meant suffering. It does not. It means the right to vote. Most had a Bill of Rights that protected people's individual rights, which when we when you watch the Federalist 51, you would learn that the Constitution also was promised to have a Bill of Rights. And many had a constitution of state established religions, while others, a continuation of state established, sorry, continuation, I said constitution, a continuation of state established religions, while others disestablished religion. Okay, the United States currently has no established religion. That is in the First Amendment, we have freedom of religion. Okay, occupational consumption of several states and assemblies. Okay, so these are kind of their budgets, and And you could see where, so these are the different jobs. If you look, Massachusetts, half of the people in this state were farmers, and you know, planter elite. If you look, go to down to South Carolina, it's almost all planter elite. Um, so Indian land cessions under the Articles of Confederation. We ceded certain lands to Indians. There was a dispute in territory between Spain and the U.S. in the South. We had claims to Western lands, and you already did the land ordinance and the Northwest ordinance, but the land ordinance organized the land into all these little subsections. The Northwest ordinance established was one of the major accomplishments. They took the land from the land ordinance, and they said how a territory could become a state. So there were three stages. One, Congress had appointed 3 judges and a governor for each territory. The population reached 5,000 adult males. Landowners, they could elect a legislature, and then when the population went to 60,000, they'd elect delegates and state constitutional convention, and then they could apply for statehood. In 1787, these were the states, and there were all these territories. And the government was going all right, but it was petering around with no progress. Okay, so come 1786, at the Annapolis Convention, 12 representatives from 5 different states showed up, and one of the things they wanted to do was change trade and commerce between states. Not enough states were there, and they sent a report to Congress calling for a meeting in Philadelphia to examine areas broader than just trade and commerce and how to fix the election, how to fix the Constitution, which was the Articles of Confederation. As this is going on in Massachusetts, Daniel Shays, who was a farmer who had not been paid his money from when he was in the Revolution, he gets mad. He lives in Western Mass, and him and a bunch of small farmers who are crushed by debt and taxes and hadn't been paid by the federal government stage a rebellion. And ultimately, they control Western Mass for a bit in the Springfield area until private money goes to local militias to put them down. But it lasts from 1786 to 1787. And George Washington, who would become the first president, says there's no stronger evidence than Shays' Rebellion to prove that there needs to be a constitution that is stronger than the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation only did a couple of things well. They ran the war. That's one thing they did well. They had a post office. That was a good thing that they had. And they successfully negotiated the Treaty of Paris at the end of the war. Other than that, it was an absolute failure. And therefore, they needed to have a constitution.